Overall, the past couple of years were troubling years. The pandemic completely changed the world. An enraged crowd invaded the American capital. Parts of the world's temperatures pose a threat to human survival. Now, several developing nations are dealing with debt crisis, starvation, and extreme weather, while a major war in Europe is raging, and its architect threatens nuclear escalation. These occurrences were anticipated, but they would have been entirely unbelievable a few years ago. They'd also occur when more people are displaced or go hungry, often due to warfare, than at any point since World War II. The worst-case scenarios for this year's key topics seem improbable. Will significant powers engage in conflict in 2023, or will they end an almost 80-year nuclear arms embargo? Will political unrest, economic hardship, and climatic disaster lead to social unrest in specific nations worldwide? Watch this epic video to find answers to some crucial questions. Ukraine joining NATO. According to a Russian Security Council source quoted recently, if Ukraine joins the US-led NATO military alliance, the war there will inevitably worsen and turn into World War III. On September 30, only a few hours after Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, formally proclaimed the annexation of up to 18% of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky made a surprise application for fast-track membership in NATO. Kyiv is well aware that such a step would mean a guaranteed escalation to World War III. TASS quoted Alexander Venediktov, the Deputy Secretary of Russia's Security Council, as saying, Venediktov, a close supporter of Putin and deputy to the Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev, asserted that he believed Ukraine's bid to join NATO was propagandist, since the West was aware of the implications. President Vladimir Putin has criticized the United States for pushing NATO's eastward expansion on numerous occasions, particularly for its courtship of former Soviet nations like Ukraine and Georgia, which Russia views as being inside its own sphere of influence. On September 21, Putin issued a warning to the West, stating that he was serious when he indicated he would be prepared to use nuclear weapons to defend Russia against what he called nuclear blackmail from powerful Western nations. According to U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, the chance of nuclear Armageddon is more significant than it has been since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The annual NATO Steadfast Noon nuclear readiness drill is scheduled for next week. The majority of nuclear warheads in the world are controlled by Russia and the United States, making them by far the two nuclear superpowers. Venediktov warned that Zelensky's suggestion for preemptive strikes against Russia was risky, warning that nuclear war would be terrible for the globe. We must remember, a nuclear conflict will affect absolutely the whole world, not only Russia and the collective West, but every country on this planet, Venediktov said. The consequences would be disastrous for all mankind. According to a survey, fears of World War III are growing amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There are a few indications that Russia's unprovoked war with Ukraine will end soon, as it has now entered its 12th month. Instead, it seems more likely that the fighting will get worse. Last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin made startling warnings in his speech that accompanied his announcement that he would call 300,000 reserve personnel. Putin said that his country has numerous means of devastation and, when threatened, would use all the methods at their disposal. He also referred to the West allegedly using nuclear blackmail against Russia without providing evidence. This comes after Russia allegedly provoked a Ukrainian nuclear power facility in August, which a U.S. Department of Defense official called the height of irresponsibility. Apparently, the globe is taking these risks and their wider global ramifications seriously, according to a startling new finding from an international poll. The results come from the yearly, perception-based rankings of countries produced by U.S. News and World Report's Best Countries survey, which was conducted this year from April 30 to July 13. Three-quarters of respondents to a study of more than 17,000 people conducted globally agreed with the statement, "I believe we are heading closer to World War III." The world in 2023. The outlook for 2023 is bleak. A near-inevitable worldwide recession brought on by a protracted war in Europe's frozen east, an oil catastrophe accompanied by skyrocketing prices, with COVID-19 finally wreaking havoc in China. Nevertheless, there are causes for optimism. In Brazil, a new president has promised to safeguard the Amazon, and the same energy crisis has sparked an extraordinary demand for renewable energy, which is anticipated to explode. While this is happening, repressive governments will anxiously watch Iran, where conservative clerics struggle with a powerful pro-democracy rebellion that could topple them next year. Syria. Years of conflict lead to a health emergency. Syria's healthcare system has been decimated by more than 10 years of conflict, and the nation is now on the verge of economic collapse. Food prices and poverty have risen further due to a decade of fighting. A staggering 75% of Syrians currently depend on humanitarian aid to meet their necessities. The cost of goods will keep rising through 2023. More people may be forced to leave their homes due to the ongoing conflict and bombings of the nation. Azerbaijan and Armenia. The South Caucasus is felt most keenly if the Ukraine conflict has impacted other global crises. 2 years after their most recent conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, it seems that Armenia and Azerbaijan may soon engage in another conflict. In that conflict, which resulted in the deaths of more than 7,000 soldiers, Azerbaijani forces drove out Armenians from territories in and around the Nagorno-Karabakh enclave that Armenian forces had controlled since the early 1990s. Russia's struggles in Ukraine have thrown off regional projections. Even though a new war would be shorter than the 6-week fight in 2020, it would still be significant. Moscow eventually mediated a ceasefire. The scales have since tipped even further in Azerbaijan's favor, because Russia, its regular arms supplier, is running low on supplies. The Armenian army has not restocked its forces or arsenal. In contrast, Azerbaijan has been stepping up. Its army is much stronger than Armenia's, much better supplied, and supported by Turkey. The increased demand for Azerbaijani gas in Europe has given Baku more confidence. However, Russian soldiers have not prevented many flare-ups this year. In Nagorno-Karabakh, Azerbaijani troops expanded their conquest in March and August, taking control of vital mountain heights. Azerbaijani armies invaded Armenian territory in September. The bloodshed increased with each attack. Yemen conflict rising in 2023. Yemen is in a precarious situation. Houthi rebels and the nation's internationally recognized government, predominantly supported by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, reached a truce in April that expired in October. Although there hasn't been much new fighting, both sides are getting ready to renew hostilities. An unexpected bright point in a bloody 8-year struggle was the UN-mediated ceasefire. The Houthis, who rule a large portion of Yemen's northwestern region, appear to be winning the war in November 2021. They would have won the struggle for the north if they had captured Marib and the neighboring oil and gas facilities, which would also have provided their quasi-state with much-needed finances and brought an end to the administration of then-President Abd Rabbo Mansour Hadi. Their onslaught was thwarted in January 2022 when United Arab Emirates allied forces drove the Houthis out of crucial terrain in Marib and neighboring Shabwa. In retaliation, the Houthis attacked the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia with drone and cross-border missile attacks. Then the conflict in Ukraine led to a global shortage of food and fuel, putting more strain on all sides. Even in the absence of the truce, fighting has essentially stopped. Significant ground offensives and cross-border assaults have not been restarted, and negotiations are ongoing, primarily through bilateral Saudi-Houthi channels. But tensions are becoming worse. Oil shipments have stopped due to the Houthis firing what they describe as warning rounds toward PLC-controlled oil and gas infrastructure. Tension in Taiwan. As Beijing pursues unification with the island and Washington seeks to maintain importance in the region, the biggest flashpoint between the US and China appears to be becoming more unstable. China's goal has always been unification. Beijing said it wants a peaceful resolution but won't rule out using force. According to Washington, Xi Jinping has specified 2027 as the deadline by which China's military should be able to annex Taiwan. The United States, on the other hand, continues to adhere to a one-China policy that aims for a peaceful resolution of Taiwan's status without imposing any judgment on the result, and maintains a position of strategic ambiguity over whether it would defend Taiwan. However, as Beijing grows more robust and more forceful, Washington's policies appear to be becoming more rigid than they were when China's military was more vulnerable. When outgoing U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taipei, Taiwan's capital, things heated up last summer. Pelosi does not answer to U.S. President Joe Biden in her capacity as a lawmaker, whose administration reportedly discouraged the visit. However, Beijing naturally perceived her visit as a strong show of support for Taipei and a warning that the United States was losing its commitment to the One China policy. In response, China conducted previously unheard of military drills surrounding Taiwan and sent ships and aircraft across the median line, which has long been the unspoken boundary of Chinese military activity in the Taiwan Strait. The rising drumbeat of World War III is alarming. After tense years of COVID-19, the world faces intense energy, political, and economic crisis. Let's see how our leaders resolve these issues to save the world from a deadly nuclear war.